The Ridge Ranch sat like a quiet kingdom in the rolling hills of eastern Kentucky, 300 acres of stubborn soil, oak groves, and barbed wire fences built with weather-worn hands. The main house was a modest two-story farmhouse with a wide front porch, flanked by creaky rocking chairs and ivy-covered railings. Everything about it said, "This land has history." Clayton Ridge, 32, 6 feet 5 inches, shoulders broad from years of roping cattle and hauling feed, was its lone ruler. With hazel honey eyes that flickered gold in the sun, and tan skin permanently kissed by wind and grit, he wore silence like a second skin. His only family nearby was his aging cattle and a dusty photo of his younger sister, Emma, who'd moved to Arizona years ago. They texted often, but it wasn't the same as home. Clayton Ridge wasn't a man who trusted easily, least of all didn't expect help when his prized bull, Sterling, came up lame one rainy morning. But a call to the nearest animal hospital in town, out of sheer necessity, brought it anyway. It came in the form of Dr. Lila James. She stepped out of her pickup truck with a vet bag slung over one-toned shoulder, her 4C hair neatly twisted and pulled into a low bun that framed a face of rich mahogany skin and calm determination. She moved with purpose, grace, and confidence. Her body strong, like someone who took care of herself not for vanity, but out of pride. He watched from the barn door with narrowed eyes as she knelt in the dirt beside Sterling, her sleeves rolled and her gloves smeared with iodine. She moved confidently, like someone who'd grown up in this world, even though her license plate read Louisville. "You stuck 'em already?" he called out. "Yep," she replied, not looking up. "It's an abscess. Had to drain it before it spread." Clayton stepped closer, boots crunching over hay and gravel. "You always make decisions before talking to the owner?" "Only when the owner is late and his bull's got a ticking clock," she replied, finally turning toward him. He had a fever and an abscess brewing. It couldn't wait. Their eyes met. Hers were sharp, assessing, but not unkind. He scowled. "I didn't hire you to lecture me." "No," she said, straightening. "You hired me to save your bull." "You're welcome." Lila's clinic was in a rented space on the edge of town, 20 minutes from Ridge Ranch, surrounded by open pastures and winding gravel roads. She lived in the tiny apartment above the clinic, one bedroom, a balcony with hanging ferns, and a record player that played old-school soul. She had just started her practice after finishing her doctorate. Born and raised in Lexington, she was an only child, her mother a nurse, her father a truck mechanic. Both were gone now. At 29, she'd built this new life herself. She knew loss, had been burnt by it, was always on guard because of it. When she returned to the ranch to check on Sterling a week later and drop off meds, Clayton met her at the gate with arms crossed and a guarded expression. "You always make second visits without being asked?" She raised a brow. "You always forget your vet left antibiotics behind?" she said, brushing past him. He noticed her perfume, subtle, warm, like cedar and citrus. It lingered in the air between them as he let her through with a sigh. Inside the barn, one of his older mares whinnied sharply. "That leg's sore," Lila said, nodding. "She's fine. She's limping. You need to soak that leg in Epsom salt and warm water. She don't like being handled much. She doesn't need to like it." "You want her healed or not?" He frowned. "You always this stubborn?" "Only when I'm right." Their argument was shorter this time, ending with Clayton yielding to her suggestion of a warm poultice. As she worked, he stood behind her, watching the gentle care in her hands. She looked up once, feeling his examining stare. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. You're just headstrong." She smirked. Better than grunting through life. Later, as the sun set low, he watched her drive off and realized for the first time since he could remember, he wanted to be in the company of someone other than his animals. But in no one else's company except hers. A month had passed. The days stretched longer, and the hills were a vibrant green against a golden sky. Lila stayed after a visit that evening to help fix a broken fence line on the northern edge of the property. Sweat lined her forehead as she pulled taut the wire, her hands calloused but steady. "You do this often?" she asked, panting slightly. "Every spring. Keeps the coyotes out." She looked out toward the tree line, breathing in the deep scent of clean air and raw earth and something familiar, something close to feeling like home. "It's peaceful out here. Doesn't feel lonely?" He didn't answer. They finished as the sun dipped behind the ridge, casting warm hues over the barn and fields. Lila stepped toward an old stone well. "Still working?" "Dried up years ago. Clayton said, nodding toward the stone circle. Used to draw clean water when I was a kid. Still a good view, though. She stepped near the edge. Still looks beautiful. The moment she leaned over, a loose rock on the edge shifted and fell straight into the hole. Its loud landing echoing the depth and shallowness of the empty beauty. He reached out instinctively, something fierce, bordering protectiveness, radiating in his action as he grabbed her. Careful. He gently pulled her back by the elbow towards his chest. His hand lingered, her breath caught as her finger instinctively wrapped around the lapel of his shirt to catch herself. They stood in silence as the sun sank behind the hills. For a second, the air changed, charged still. "Thanks," she said breathlessly, eyes locked with his. "You always this chivalrous. Having you in my arms like this, I am trying to be." Her breath caught, but he stepped back. "You hungry?" he asked. She shook her head, more so to clear the mind fog she found herself in. "Not enough for dinner. Maybe just a drink next time." Summer rain swept in with drama. The storm came fast, clouds, wind, thunder that rattled the barn. Lila had stayed late to examine a nervous heifer when the skies broke open. Clayton hurried to get the gate secured against the merciless winds. Lightning flashed. A loud crack split the sky, and lightning struck a tree nearby. Lila screamed as the barn doors slammed shut behind them. He reached her first, caught her by the shoulders, shielding her with his body as the world seemed to unravel behind the walls protecting them. "It's okay," Clayton said gently. "We're safe in here." She nodded but clutched his shirt, shaky. "I hate storms." "You're not alone," he said. They sat close on a stack of hay, listening to the rain hammer the roof. The storm howled outside, but inside was quiet, his coat draped over her shoulders, his hand brushing hers to keep them warm. He noticed the size different, like he was noticing little things about her. Her hands felt small in his large ones, but somehow seemed to fit so perfectly when he cupped them between his own. Their thighs touched. Head rested lightly on his shoulder, and he felt it. His heartbeat quickening. She looked up once, her face inches from his. He looked down into her eyes, his usually guarded expression now raw and open with emotions she wasn't ready to give name. Her head inched toward his, silently seeking to close the distance and cross that line they both desperately wanted to go over. "Clayton." Jaw clenched. He stood abruptly. "Storm's passing. We should check the herd." Then he was out the door walking in the rain that was coming down now in light sprinkle. Later that night, they shared a meal by lantern light on his front porch. He warmed a can of chili on the wood stove while she wrapped a blanket around her legs. "Were you always a vet?" he asked. "Ever since I watched my dog give birth at 8, she said. "You? Always a rancher. Family legacy. Only thing I've ever known." He handed her a cup of black coffee after their meal. Their fingers touched. "Thank you," she said quietly. Clayton hesitated. "I'm not good at this. Talking." "You're doing all right." She looked at him with a soft smile. He reached up and gently tucked a loose twist of hair behind her ear. She closed her eyes at his touch, but neither leaned in. Not yet. They saw each other more. Coffee after appointments, casual conversations whenever she stopped by the ranch, which she found herself doing often, that drifted into long, meaningful silences. One evening, they sat under a tree after tagging calves. "You always live alone out here?" she asked. "Since my folks passed. Just me and the work. No girlfriend? No wife?" He chuckled. "Not much room for courting when your dates are cows with mastitis." She laughed, eyes bright in the lantern's glow, and he realized he loved the sound. How it transformed her face and deepened the dimple on her right cheek. "Well," she said, brushing her twists back, "maybe it's time you considered expanding the herd, metaphorically." "Maybe," he murmured, staring at her as she looked off into the fields. The late summer heat brought thick air and dry earth. The days were long, the nights restless. Word came that a neighboring ranch had been hit with an aggressive respiratory illness in its cattle. Lila immediately offered to help with quarantine measures, working long hours across county lines. "Don't risk yourself for my sake," he told her. "I'm not." Her eyes were firm. "I'm risking myself for them." Watching her lead the animals, calm and firm, something shifted in him. On the drive back, he glanced over at her. She was humming softly, unaware of his eyes lingering. "You're brave," he said. She smiled. "You noticing?" "Yeah," he said, "I am." Every fall, the county hosted a barn dance in town, boots stomping on dusty floors, fried pies, and old fiddlers who knew all the love songs. Clayton hadn't been in years, but this time he showed up, pressed shirt, clean jeans, and his late father's bolo tie. The old town barn glowed under strings of warm Edison bulbs, and Lila, in a fitted rust-orange dress, gold earrings catching the lantern, light just right against her mahogany skin and boots that matched her twist out perfectly, stepped in feeling the nerves settle low in her belly. She moved through the room like she belonged to the land now, not just to the animals. Clayton saw her before she saw him. He stood taller than the crowd, his shirt sleeves rolled, hair a little tousled. When she approached, his gaze didn't move, not once. "Lila." "Clayton." He offered his hand. She took it. "You dance?" he asked. "I haven't in years." "Let's fix that," he whispered as he guided her to the well-worn dance floor. "You clean up all right, cowboy," she said as he spun her gently. His voice dipped as he settled his hands on the small of her back, shamelessly loving the feel of her in his arms. "You make the floor look better just by standing on it." On the wooden dance floor, they started with a jittery two-step. By the second song, they moved closer. Her hand fit perfectly in his. Her head rested just shy of his chest. They danced through 2 songs, then 3. The fourth slowed into something tender, their bodies aligned perfectly, breath synchronized. As the song slowed, her lips grazed his jaw by accident. Or maybe not. She tilted her head, but Clayton paused respectfully, purposefully. Their noses touched. As the music ended, she looked up. He leaned down slightly, but paused. "Not here," he said quietly. She nodded, her fingers brushing his chest. "Not yet." Back at the ranch, she cooked chili while he repaired her clinic's window screens. They ate under the stars, shoulder to shoulder. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked. He thought about it. "I did," he said. "Not so much lately." After the meal, she got up to collect the dishes. She dropped a cup. He reached to steady her. His hand brushed hers, their faces inches apart. "You make it hard to breathe sometimes," he admitted. Her breath hitched, but again he pulled back. As the harvest approached, their rhythms intertwined. He'd touch her back as she passed, linger in the kitchen after she brought over her grandma's potato stew. Her scent, jojoba and jasmine, made his head tilt every time. He stopped by her clinic once a week now, sometimes with no real reason, sometimes with her favorite cherry scones from Marla's bakery. The town had noticed. The two of them, gravitating, but neither pushed. Not yet. Mornings meant shared coffee, at her clinic or whenever she stopped by the ranch. Afternoons, labor side by side. Evenings often ended on the porch with chilled sweet tea and murmured conversation. She started leaving books on his kitchen table. He started chopping fruit for her in the morning. One night, they fell asleep watching a movie on his couch. When she stirred, his arm instinctively wrapped around her waist. Neither moved. Her head rested over his heart, and he held her like something precious, something not yet his, but something he was already beginning to love. When the offer from Lexington came in, Lila hesitated. It was her dream, leading a statewide research project in equine at a veterinary institute. Full research grant, a chance to expand her reach. But it meant leaving. She sat on the porch swing that night, staring into the distance. Clayton stepped out with 2 mugs. "Hot cider," he said. She looked up. "I got the offer." He froze, then sat beside her. "You're going?" She nodded slowly. "I want it. I've always wanted it." He didn't touch her, just listened. She swallowed. "Now, I don't know. I am scared. Scared that if I stay, I'll fall too hard and wonder what if, and if I go, I'll lose what's already slipping in." Clayton finally spoke. "If you love someone, you let 'em go. And if they were meant to be yours, they'll come back. But it doesn't mean it don't hurt like hell." He handed her the mug. Their fingers lingered. "You gotta go, you should," he said quietly. "But if you're asking whether I care, I do, fiercely." She looked back through her dusty rearview as she drove away. He stood where she left him, hands in his pockets, watching her like a man already missing something he couldn't name. 7 months passed. She called when she could. "You eating enough?" she asked once. "Lost my appetite since the doc stopped showing up," he said. She paused, then whispered, "I miss the Ridge Ranch." But what she didn't say, not yet, was "I miss you." Text messages at first, then fewer, then silence. Clayton didn't say it out loud, but he felt her absence like a misplaced boot. His mornings grew quiet. His meals returned to silence. Her laughter, sharp, rich, comforting, lingered in the corners of the house like a song he couldn't get out of his head. Until one quiet spring morning, Clayton was by the well, the one she'd heartedly admired and almost fell into, shirtless, dirt on his hands, cursing under his breath. When he looked up, there she was. Lila? Her twists had gotten longer. She wore the boots he'd once gifted her when hers couldn't handle the terrain of his land, with jeans that hugged her, curves and a linen strap top that made her exposed skin glimmer under the soft morning light. But her eyes, they spoke before she did. She took a breath, eyes wide. "I've missed you," she breathed out. He stepped forward slowly, unsure if she was real. "You came back. I made a choice," she said. His pulse quickened. "You sure?" She stepped in close. "I needed to tell you what I learned." He didn't speak. "I learned that fear don't protect you. It just keeps out everything good. I love you, Clayton Ryland, and if you still want me, I'm yours." He crossed the space between them in seconds, lifting her face, kissing her like it meant breathing. The kiss was earth and sky, fire and water, soft and deep. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. "I built a life without knowing it was missing its center," he whispered. That night, she showed up at his house with a bottle of wine, changed into soft denim and a knowing smile. They sat on the couch. One sip of wine turned into two. The space between them vanished. She pulled his shirt collar down gently, tracing her fingers over the sun-darkened skin of his chest. He cupped her jaw. "I don't want to disrespect what this is." "You won't," she whispered, brushing his lips with hers. The kiss deepened. Her hands pressed against his chest, sliding under his shirt. He groaned low, pulling her closer, his mouth trailing to her neck. She tugged at the hem of her own blouse, his hands following with reverence, never rushing. Their breaths grew ragged, her body molded against his kisses slowed only to admire, her collarbone, her shoulder, her curves. "Lila," he murmured, his voice strained. "If we keep going." She nodded, breathless. "I know." He paused, foreheads touching. "We wait," he said firmly. "I want our first time to be when you're mine." "I already am," she whispered. Still, he wrapped her in a blanket, kissed her one last time, and carried her to the guest room. Not out of distance, but out of promise. They settled in slowly. Lila worked her clinic and used her research with nearby ranches. On weekends, she walked barefoot through Ryland Ranch's fields, her laughter echoing off the hills. Clayton never stopped looking at her like she hung the moon. One evening, he took her hand beneath the oak tree out back during a night stroll. Seated on the grass, leaned against the tree, they stared out in the open grassland, a sky littered with stars. "I never wanted anything more than peace, but you're more. You're home." He moved from behind her to kneel in front of her, taking her hand into his. Old-fashioned, of course. "Marry me, Lila Mae James?" Straight to the point as always, she thought with a chuckle. She couldn't speak, just nodded. Her smile shook, eyes wet. He kissed her slow under the moonlight, soft, reverent, and full of everything they hadn't said until now. They married in the spring, beneath the old oak tree on the ranch, surrounded by neighbors, friends, and a choir of wind through the branches. Clayton wore a dark vest and his father's bolo tie. Lila wore a lace dress with a crown of wildflowers in her twists. Her skin glowed under the late afternoon sunlight. Their vows were simple. "I will honor, protect, and grow with you," he said. "I will love you in every season, no matter how wild the storm," she promised. Later that night, their wedding cabin glowed with firelight. He undressed her slowly, reverently. Every touch was a vow of its own. All the waiting, the aching, the tension, all of it poured into the way he touched her, reverent, gentle, like worship. "Every part of you," he whispered, "was worth the wait." Married life unfolded slowly. Coffee at dawn, fence posts by day, quiet laughter by firelight. He kissed her forehead after long days. She left love notes in his work shirts. They planned the future together, her expanding the clinic, him raising a new herd. The sun had barely crested the hills when Lila stepped onto the porch with a glass of fresh-pressed orange juice in one hand and a smile she couldn't quite contain. Clayton was already seated on the old swing bench he'd refinished himself, smoothing down the wood until it shone like honey. It creaked gently under his weight as he rocked slowly, his gaze sweeping the golden hills he called home. She handed him the juice and sat beside him, curling her legs beneath her. He reached out instinctively, resting his hand on the curve of her waist, his thumb drawing lazy circles through the cotton of her sundress. "When the baby arrives," she said casually, "can we place a swing bench out here for them? Right by the porch edge, so they can look over the hills while we rock them to sleep?" Clayton stilled. For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he set the glass down slowly, carefully, like the moment itself was fragile. "If we ever have kids," he started, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips, "I'll build them one to fit our whole family." Lila looked at him, her eyes warm and shimmering. "I didn't say if," she whispered. "I said when." Her hand moved gently over her stomach. The air shifted. The world paused. And then something in his expression cracked wide open. Joy, wonder, and the purest kind of reverence. His eyes went glassy. He froze. "Are you?" She nodded, eyes misting. "You're gonna be a daddy, Cowboy." Clayton exhaled slowly, then leaned in and kissed her forehead. "I'll build them anything they need," he said, "but especially that swing." They sat in silence for a while, her head tucked against his shoulder, the wind rustling the tall grass like a lullaby. The swing creaked beneath them in a rhythm that matched their hearts. Clayton held her a little tighter and glanced toward the horizon. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think loving someone like this wasn't for men like me, that it was either the land or love. But turns out, when you choose the right person, you don't have to sacrifice either. They just become home." Lila's smile deepened. "You're my home too, Cowboy." Months later, as they sat on that porch swing, the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and hay. The sun dipped low over Ridge Ranch. Two hearts, and one tiny new one, beat softly, in sync with the rhythm of home. Life's not always fast-paced romance and whirlwind passion. Sometimes it's slow-burning love, the kind that teaches you patience, the kind that reminds you that good things take time, that trust must be built, and that healing often walks hand in hand with connection. So if you've ever doubted whether love like this exists, we hope this story reminded you that it does. If this story gave you a moment to breathe, to feel, to escape, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Here you'll always find stories that slow the world down for a while and remind you that real love, it's still out there, steady, strong, and worth waiting for.